What is up, guys? This is Captain Wet here with another video guide, this time covering the Spectral Knight in Dark and Darker, and how to farm the Spectral Fabrics. This guy's not too difficult once you get a grasp for his moveset, and he is much easier to fight in gear, but we're going to go over how to learn fighting him in just base gear and throwing yourself at him to figure it out a couple times. I'm going to cover fighting him in solos and fighting him in teams, and how to do it in basically every class. Though each class will have a little bit of a difference to them, knowing how to dodge his moves is more or less the primary target of the guide, as well as how to deal with him with multiple people in the room. So if you would like to see more content like this, you can drop a subscription or a like on this video for more content and hit the bell for more notifications. And if you want to watch any of this stuff live, you can watch it on twitch.tv/CaptainWet. I appreciate it, and we're going to jump right into it. During this guide, I'm going to cover melee in separate sections. We will have fast, medium, and slow weapons. And then I will also cover ranged and magic, but those will be towards the end. There will be chapters to skip to what you need if you don't need melee and you're trying to figure out how to do it on, say, Warlock or Wizard. You can jump to those sections. There will also be tips at the end that are kind of advanced techniques or things that are a little more risky but get you extra DPS. Coming in slightly over 2500 health, the health on this guy might seem a little daunting at first. However, he has many large openings and windows to get damage in on him while he has cooldowns between his attacks. He also has very low physical resistance, in fact negative physical resistance, and also very low magical resistance, though he does have a good amount of projectile resistance. And as a class like a wizard, you'll be suffering both the penalties from your projectiles and your magic damage on top of each other. Once you get a hang of it too, it is also a very easy boss to recover damage from in the middle of the fight, so long as you have some kind of meds on you, bandages and potions. It might seem like it's difficult at first, but if you keep distance on him, it's actually very easy to recover, which also makes it fairly easy to be able to fight him with a ranged weapon if you have team in the room, where you just run away and shoot at him whenever he's on your teammate. Before we get over how to get through the boss fight, we're going to start by telling you how to get to the boss. The boss is located in the module directly north of the center tile, and there's a staircase on both ends to get to him. This is going to be a quick flow chart of how to get to all of them from the spawns across the map. If a path has an arrow on it, it means just to converge with the following path there. I know there's a lot of things going on here. The routing is, in my opinion, the best routing you can take. However, one thing to keep in mind of is the reason the routing is this way is there is a cockatrice spawn in the boss module in the bottom left corner and in the top right corner. It's not always there. It's a 50-50 if it's a cockatrice or a wraith, and if it is a cockatrice, a 50-50 of which corner it's in. But this pathing directly will alleviate ever running into it. There is also the wraith spawn. However, the wraith can only spawn on the left side. It can sometimes kind of aggro over to you on the right side, but for the most part, if you take these paths, it'll only catch you in that northwest, the top left corner. If you do catch him here, you might want to deal with him. If you don't want to deal with him, you could just run into the boss room, and it shouldn't be an issue, but he will stay aggroed, and he will rotate around to the other side if you try going out the other side. And if anyone else comes down, more than likely they bring the wraith with them, because it'll stay aggroed to you for some reason rather than re-aggroing to them if they don't hit it. If you get lost along the way and get some damage on you, there is a health shrine in the center module as well as in the top left module if you accidentally aggro a harpy or a direwolf up there. The top left module pathing looks a little strange. It is to go away from the harpy. If you're trying to just boss rush, you don't want to have to deal with them. But you can just go straight south from that module and deal with them if you need to. So you're at the boss and you're finally ready to fight him. If you've got any buffs you can do, this is the time to do it, as the boss has a window to attack him right when he spawns for a couple of seconds. I've noticed it's easier to hit the front than it is the back, but if you go for the actual pieces of armor, the legs of it, and the back of the body piece, you can hit him as well as when he grabs his sword in the opening, you can grab a couple of hits into his head there. If the boss is reset by any means, if someone leaves the room and isn't in there for the fight, he will not reset, so you won't get this opening damage every time, only the first time. Now we're going to start going over his different attacks and how to dodge them. He has two different sets of attacks, kind of ones that he'll use at a distance and ones that he'll use up close. A lot of them have identical close range and far range attacks. They just reach further when you're further away. And a lot of the attacks are dodged the same way. And when you are fighting this boss, you should always be rotating one way, either right or left. I find it to be easier to rotate to the right side, but this is how I fight most bosses. You could choose to do either or. Just do note whenever there's a vertical dodge that you can do or diagonal dodge, it might be the opposite direction whenever you're dodging attacks, going a left rotate. So we're going to start with the front slash. He has both a long range and a close range version of this attack. It is identical though. All you have to do is strafe to the left or right side of him. Like I said, I like to prefer to rotate around right. He does have a long cooldown between this attack and will never continue a combo directly after the attack, so even if you have a slower attacking weapon, this is your opportune moment to strike. If you have a dagger, you can get a couple hits in, or a rapier. If you have an axe or a war maul, this is where you can get a hit or two in. A clear indicator for this attack is how he raises his sword up over his head before he strikes. The next attack in his arsenal is a low sweeping attack. He likes to do this one mid-combo a lot. And this one, all you have to do is jump and move back. You do just have to jump the attack. However, the difficult part of this is if you are too close, he will still hit you with the hilt of his blade. So you do need to kind of jump away from this attack. You don't really need to jump left or right, just back from this one. Or if you just get enough distance, if you're far away, this one will also miss you. It has a very low range. The indicator for this attack is when the sword starts on his shoulder and he sweeps down low to the other side of his body around behind his back. You can do this from either shoulder. You can get a free hit in here with any weapon of any kind. Just make sure if it's a slower attacking weapon such as the war maul that you begin your attack before you hit the ground to get time to dodge the follow-up attack. The next attack we're going to cover is the frontal lunge attack. He has both a short range and long range variant to this attack. If it's the long range variant, I would never attempt to make an attack on this. However, if it is the short range version, you may be able to rotate around close and get hits in if you have such a weapon as a dagger or a rapier. Slower weapons, I would not risk an attack as he recovers quickly from this move. In order to dodge this, you just strafe left or right. It's very easy to dodge, but careful, don't move back in front of him too quickly as it still does damage even after the lunge when his sword's returning to him. This one has an easy indicator of him just rearing back his right arm with the sword. The next move we're going to cover is the long range dash. This is, out of all of them, is probably the easiest one to dodge in solos, but one of the more tricky moves when you're playing in teams. One of the most important things about this if you're playing in a team to remember is that he could target a person behind you and he kind of loses movement speed as he charges. So he starts with more speed than when he ends. So if you are close to him and you have a teammate directly behind you, often this will end up with him hitting you. You want to make sure whenever you're rotating around him as a team that you don't ever line up with the boss, as this could end up getting someone hit. The dodge is simply move to the left or to the right. It has 0 tracking once he begins swinging, and it looks the same as the forward thrust, but he will only do this if he's far away from you. If you have a quick weapon, you can often get a hit in after he does the dash as well, but I wouldn't recommend it with any of slower weapons. The next attack we're going to cover is the shoulder bash. It's very similar to the lunge, however he moves in with his left shoulder rather than with the sword. This attack can be incredibly difficult to dodge if you have a very close range weapon such as a dagger, but easy to dodge if you could take a step back with pretty much any other weapon. The range on it is very low, but it does have good tracking, so you can't simply rotate around him. You do need to backpedal a little bit here. He often follows this attack with another, so I would only try to get a hit in here if you have a very fast attacking weapon such as a dagger or a high dex class with a rapier. If this attack does hit you, it does knock you back a bit, but it doesn't do severe damage, so often you can recover from it. The next attack we're going to cover is the horizontal slash. The way to dodge this is to simply duck. If you are farther away from him, you can duck and look down and face away because it has a kind of a little bit of a lower sweep towards the end. You don't have to actually look down in his face, though it's kind of a habit for a lot of players. If you have a stabbing weapon, such as a dagger or rapier that doesn't have any overhead or long arm motions, you can also just kind of stand in front of him and get stabs in during this time too. Though you do have to be careful which weapon you have, because if your arms are raised above your head at all, it will hit you still. The next pair of attacks we're going to cover is his diagonal attack. He has a diagonal chop in which he starts from the right side, but there's 2 different variations. One where he sweeps from low to high, and one where he sweeps from high to low, always in a diagonal X in front of his face. The way you dodge this is based on which side of him you're on, and whether it's going from high to low or low to high. I tend to be on the right side for these attacks, so if you are on his right side and it is a low sweep to high, you want to duck under it. If it is a high sweep to low, you want to jump over it and also move slightly to the right if you can help it. If you're on his left side, you're going to do the inverse. So if you're on his left side and he's sweeping from low to high, you want to jump and go to the left. And if he's going from high to low, you want to just crouch. If you are already in his face during this attack, you can just simply rotate around his right side and continue attacking the whole time with pretty much any weapon. The Shockwave attack is very easy to dodge, however, it can be easy to make a mistake on if you have a slower moving class with a slower attacking weapon. All this attack is a Shockwave around him. It hits twice, so don't move in too quickly. It does a first initial blast, and then a second one if you go in too quick might hit you. It does just an area of effect around him, however, it does leave a debuff on the ground that lasts for probably around 30 seconds that will deal a slow damage tick over time and a movement speed penalty, and if you get caught in this, it can make it harder to dodge other attacks. There's not a way to punish this attack with melee, however you have spells or if you have a bow with you, you can get a hit in here for free usually while he's doing this animation. This is also the most opportune time to heal if you ever need to heal during the fight. His next attack is his aerial dive bomb. This one's actually really easy to dodge, but if you do mess it up, will do a lot of damage. Basically, he'll leap in the air and try to target someone in the room to drive down on that's nearby him. If you just move directly underneath where he's jumping from and go to where he started, this will never hit you. Even when there's multiple players in the room, don't try to move out of his range because it may jump to a different player and not you. Just always go underneath him directly where he comes from, and then you can turn around and punish this with pretty much any kind of damage. And the last move to cover is the phase mechanic that he does at about 1/3 and 2/3 of his health damaged. This attack is a chain of 2 attacks in rapid succession. That'll either be a leg sweep followed by a head sweep, or the reverse, which will be a head sweep followed by a leg sweep. You can tell which one it is, but based on how he holds his sword when he begins the slash, either it'll be pointed up towards the ceiling, or it'll be held out at his side. When the sword is held out at his side, it means he's going to sweep low and then go high afterwards, whereas when it is held up towards the ceiling, he'll go high and then low afterwards. An easy way of remembering this is whether it's in the lower position, it means you're going to start low and then go high, and then the inverse when it's the other way. To dodge this attack, you need to jump over leg sweeps and crouch and look down underneath the overheads. You can do this by jumping and then crouching if it's starting low, or crouching and then jumping if it is starting high. You don't have to actually look at him. And the further away you are and the closer you are to his backside, the more time and less distance he'll have. You can just run out of this attack if you have enough movement speed, or if you hit him from a range to trigger him at a distance, or have some kind of damage over time to make it proc while you're far away. However, even if you do get fairly far, I would still say it's in best practice to do the dodge anyway, just in case it does reach out, because it does have a much further reach than it looks like it does. Another thing to note is that you can actually block this attack. I'm not sure if you could block the leg sweep with shield, but you can jump over it and then block the chest high one or the inverse. And also, if you have a long sword, there is a specific position you can get in where you could actually parry the whole swing altogether from behind. Your position fighting the Spectral Knight is also very important during this fight due to his 2 area of effect attacks he has. If any chance you get yourself caught in a corner, it might be death for you, even if you can dodge the mechanics proper, due to his Shockwave attack and his phasing mechanic. If you get pinched in the corner from these attacks, it could be death. So I recommend always making sure that the Spectral Knight is in the corner relative to you. You always want to have the center to your back with the Spectral Knight towards the corner from you. It doesn't necessarily matter how close to the middle of the arena you are. You could be right in the center of it, or you could have him tucked in the corner. I personally like to have him pushed kind of in the corner. It's especially helpful when playing in teams. You each kind of have your own little quadrant of the map to fight in, and not be on top of him at the same time if you can help it. A few quick tips for spellcasters. If you're playing this match in groups, it's kind of hard to get any kind of area of effect damage in, as it's very rare that you'll have an opportunity where you can hit him and not hit your teammates, especially if they're in melee range. If you have 2 ranged characters, that's different, but as far as making sure you have an opening to not hit your fellow teammates, when he does the phase mechanic and when he does his Shockwave, this is an open time to hit him with AoE damage. And if you are a warlock, whenever you have to duck an attack, you can crouch down and charge up a Hellfire, then aim up at him with it. Only if you have a high enough cast speed. If you are a wizard and you're looking for an opportunity to meditate, this can be very difficult to do in solos. If you have a teammate, then you can walk out the room and meditate quickly. But if you don't, the only opening you really have to get spells back is during his phase mechanics and his shockwaves, and these are still a high risk. You can, in desperation, climb on the side of the walls and try to meditate up there. He may miss you with a couple of his attacks, but eventually he will get a hit on you. When I tried doing solo wizards, I would get my meditates in whenever he did a shockwave, and I would only sit for about 2 ticks of the meditate before getting up. And while doing this, I would cycle through all of my spells to make sure I got the most out of every meditate. While playing a spellcaster, you will also almost always be at a distance, and you won't have to worry about any of the close dodge mechanics. You should still know how to do them, as they do pertain still, but a lot of the dodge mechanics as a long range fight you can do from just stepping away. The one move that I would say is a very dangerous one and one to look out for is his long-range duck attack, the horizontal slice. This is the one that can hit you quite far away. It catches a lot of people off guard when they're trying to fight him on Warlock or Wizard. So just make sure you're watching out for this move. Everything else, for the most part, you can just kind of backpedal from outside of the phase mechanic. Also, Warlocks, if you don't really want to learn the phase mechanic, you just phantomize through it. It's that easy. can you fight the Spectral Knight entirely using bows? While I wouldn't recommend it, I've personally now killed the Spectral Knight several times on a level 1 ranger with just base Squire kit, using a bow at least until I ran out of arrows, then swapping over to my secondary weapon. It is achievable. It's not actually all that difficult. However, the boss does have additional projectile resistance. So I would only recommend this in teams if you can just keep hitting him with a bow from afar while your teammates are fighting him with melee. However, if you do need to use a bow for any reason, you can get away with actually playing both the melee route or playing the Spellcaster route. You could sit far away and just go for shots whenever you can get them, or you can fight him from afar, up close and just dodge the attacks as you would melee. The only thing that I would say is if you're trying to fight him in melee range with a bow, you do need to kind of get the bunny hopping habits down. You would want to hop whenever you can while drawing the bow in order to dodge an attack and then fire an arrow at the same time. And one of the nice things about using a bow is that you can get headshots a majority of the time if you have decent aim. I wouldn't recommend doing it with a longbow just because of the longer draw time. I would use a recurve or a survival bow if you could help it. And I'd only really do this on Ranger or maybe Bard, but both of them have better melee options such as the spear or dagger or rapier that you could use on those classes. So this is an option to take with you if you wanted to, and it's ideally suited for doing in duos or trios. I wouldn't really recommend doing solo bow runs. When fighting the Spectral Knight, there's a couple different opportunities you can have to heal depending on what kind of heal you're doing. Potions you can chug quite often if you're doing a dodge where you're jumping over a low speed, or you're sidestepping an attack. You can often drink a potion here. You could also get bandages off when you're either doing a duck or when you're on the far side of the room, or even one of the higher tier surgical kits if you are doing a Shockwave, or if you are playing in a team, one of you could vacate the room to get a campfire kit off. However, make sure either you close the door or you move far enough away to where you're no longer in eye shot of the door, because the boss can and will aggro to you when you're outside of the room if he can see you, and he will lunge right out the room to hit you. I don't recommend trying to block most of his attacks. While almost all of them can be blocked, I don't recommend it, as most of them you can attack continuously while dodging the attacks. So it's more of a DPS loss to do it because you will be staggered even with a buckler if you're blocking them. The only exception I'd say to this is if you have a longsword. Longsword you can get parries in, which will be increased damage for blocking. So if you wanted to find a guide for that, I'd check out maybe Sparky Cowa for content on that. I don't really use longsword a ton to recommend people how to use it. I will, however, cover the more extreme blocks that you can do with this. So when I bring a shield, the only time I really do attempt to block is if I'm at like max range when he's fighting an ally, and there's kind of not room to get out of the way because I don't expect him to turn on me, or specifically the phase mechanic. If you block, if it starts high, you can block and jump back in the same motion, or if it starts low, you can jump back, then pull your shield up as you're coming down, and you can block the phase mechanic quite successfully with the shield pretty easily. I would just look slightly towards his right side, your left, when you block, and it works most of the time as long as you keep it straight on with him. When you are fighting the Spectral Knight in a team, whether it be duos or trios, or if just other randoms walk in while you're doing it solo, it isn't too hard to actually keep him separated from who he's fighting. If you're all on like a different side of him, you can notice by his body turns who he's attacking, and just play it out like assume every attack is coming for you and dodge it accordingly. And if he aerial leaps, don't worry about where you are and where he is, always go underneath him. Don't ever worry about where your teammates are. Don't try to assume it's going for you or for them. Always go to underneath him. When it comes to the line drive, the long dash across the room, also always make sure you're not lined up with a teammate, because if it's going for the back person, he'll have more speed and less reaction time for the closer person to dodge it, especially because he won't do the lunge if you're a certain distance away from him if you're too close. So it's always good to keep spacing and always try to have different sides of him. It's also good in case he does phase to always make sure that you are out of a corner side of him, even if you're not the person directly fighting him at the time. You want to make sure you're not cornered during that or a Shockwave attack, just so that no one gets caught in a corner and gets blown up from it. Overall, the fight's usually easier to deal with when you're just one-on-one with the boss, because you could assume every attack is coming for you. But you'll kill him so much quicker with a team if you could just continue to assume every attack is coming for you, even when it doesn't, and properly space so that one attack at one person doesn't hit the other person. So you finally defeated the Spectral Knight, and he has a 10% drop rate for a Spectral Fabric, currently going for around 7,000 gold, and a Spectral Hilt, currently going for around 2,000 gold. These can be used in some crafts for the future that aren't quite available yet. He also has a treasure hoard underneath you could hit. At the moment, it currently gives 5 pulls. It was buffed up from 3 recently, as well as a marvelous chest you could hit. There is also an additional door that will go to an additional loot room that will be activated when you defeat both bosses on the map. However, at the moment, the Banshee is not yet in the game and not able to be looted. So I hope this helped you get your first Spectral Knight kill. If you found the video helpful in any way, drop a like and subscribe to see more content like it. I've been continuing to work on guides as often as possible. I also stream live on Twitch every Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. You can drop by if you want to see a live demonstration on any class, just let me know. Thank you for watching.